The Galactic Union extended across thousands of light-years, linking hundreds of civilizations in a fragile balance of treaties, alliances, and diplomacy. For generations, this network of species had managed to keep peace, even though small disputes and border conflicts occasionally flared. On the frontier, new colonies often took root, hoping to carve futures far from the crowded core worlds. Nemelis was one such settlement, a lush, ocean-covered planet newly colonized by the Aryans, a race admired for their mastery of biotechnology and graceful architecture. Their cities were elegant spirals of white composites that seemed to grow out of the land itself. Yet paradise was not without peril. Being so far from the Union's heart meant defenses were thin. Nemelis had only 3 orbital defense platforms and a handful of interceptors, deemed sufficient by its leaders, who trusted in the Union's centuries of peace. Dr. Neela Varys, chief science officer of the colony, was among the first to sense disaster. While monitoring sensor feeds, her calm demeanor faltered as data confirmed her fears. Multiple vessels had dropped out of faster-than-light travel on the system's edge. Energy readings matched those of the Siraki, a dreaded name whispered across the galaxy. The Siraki were notorious predators, harvesting planets for resources and performing grotesque experiments on captured populations. Worlds that fell to them rarely survived. Neela's heart pounded as she ordered her staff to confirm the readings, then contacted Commander Ryland Orus. A former Union officer turned frontier security chief, Orus had come to Nemelis seeking peace. Instead, he now faced an invasion. Mobilizing quickly, Orus commanded the colony's defenses. All units, defensive positions. Civilians to shelters. 30 minutes maximum. His voice carried steady authority, though he knew the truth. 15 Siraki ships approached, including 3 cruisers. Against Nemelis' meager defenses, the result was already written. Within minutes, the first orbital platform was obliterated by plasma fire. The Siraki did not bother with negotiations, they simply attacked. In the control center, Neela and Ryland watched helplessly as the second platform was destroyed. Reinforcements from the Union would take at least 4 days to arrive. For days too late. "We need to send a distress call," Neela said. But the Union distress channels were already in use. Her golden eyes hardened with resolve. "I mean the quantum beacon." Shock rippled through the room. The beacon was forbidden technology, reserved for existential threats. Unlike conventional signals, its quantum entanglement allowed instant communication across the galaxy, but its signature could expose secret outposts. Orus hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Do it." Neela pressed her hand to the crystalline device, her voice steady despite the terror outside. "This is Dr. Neela Varys of the Aryan colony Nemelis. We are under Siraki attack. Defenses failing. Civilian lives at risk. Immediate aid required." The crystal pulsed, sending her plea to every quantum receiver across Union space. Now they could only wait, hoping someone somewhere would answer before it was too late. Across the Union, the forbidden beacon's cry shattered routine. In the glittering halls of Corps Command, admirals and ministers froze as the transmission echoed. In distant trade hubs, merchant ships ceased loading as crews huddled around receivers. Even in war colleges, where cadets studied past campaigns, instructors silenced classrooms to replay the desperate message. The Siraki were a scourge everyone feared, but their appearances had grown rare in recent centuries. To hear they were openly assaulting a Union colony shook the fragile peace. Worlds far from Nemelis suddenly wondered, if it could happen to them, could we be next? The Corps Command arguments erupted. "Dispatch the 7th Fleet immediately," cried Admiral Oriv. "If we delay, the colony will be ashes." Others countered, "The 7th is weeks away. By the time they arrive, there will be nothing left. We risk weakening our defenses for nothing." As debates raged, the signal continued spreading. It reached the Avrians, a reclusive telepathic species who rarely intervened in Union matters. It reached the Talcara war clans, who saw in it both threat and opportunity. Even neutral worlds intercepted the plea, whispering of Siraki cruelty. Meanwhile, on Nemelis, the Siraki descended. Their attack ships punched through the last orbital defenses, leaving only smoldering debris. Then came the landers, jagged constructs that struck the ocean and unfolded into massive machines. From them poured the Siraki themselves. Tall, sinewy forms armored in organic carapace, their weapons alive with writhing tendrils. They moved like a tide of nightmares. Commander Orus led defensive squads through the streets of the capital. Blaster fire lit the night, striking down attackers, but for every Siraki felled, 2 more surged forward. Their shrieks pierced the air, carrying both rage and hunger. Civilians fled toward subterranean shelters, clutching children, carrying what little they could. Dr. Neela Veris coordinated evacuations, her scientific mind now bent on survival logistics. She guided columns of frightened families toward magrail transports, whispering assurances she barely believed. Above, Union banners fluttered weakly in the smoke. Orus barked into his calm. North sector breached, pulling back to perimeter 3. Hold until the transports are clear. Every block became a battlefield. Soldiers fought from rooftops, in alleys, even within half-collapsed biotech towers. The Siraki advanced relentlessly, their weapons searing through walls as though the colony's architecture were paper. In the command center, Neela received fragmented reports. Shelters sealed, but not all had reached them. Transports overloaded, some failing to launch, the western districts burning. Each update hollowed her chest further. Her gaze fell to the dimly glowing beacon. Somewhere, someone had to have heard. But would they arrive in time? Then, as if mocking her faith, a new tremor shook the ground. From the largest Siraki cruiser, a colossal warform descended, part vessel, part creature, a writhing engine of destruction. Its arrival sent a psychic wave that knocked soldiers off their feet. Even hardened veterans screamed as visions of torment flooded their minds. Orus steadied himself, jaw clenched. "They're not just here to conquer," he muttered. "They're here to erase us." The arrival of the Siraki warform turned the battle into something far worse than an invasion. It wasn't simply a machine or beast. It was both, fused together in a grotesque union of flesh and metal. Towering above the capital's skyline, it loosed a roar that reverberated like a psychic quake, rattling the very bones of every living being. Dr. Neela staggered, clutching her head as alien whispers scraped across her thoughts. She glimpsed images not her own. Planets stripped bare, children twisted into bioweapons, entire cities harvested into living fuel. The Siraki were not just conquerors, they were annihilators. On the streets, soldiers faltered. "Fall back," Commander Orus shouted, dragging men to their feet. But retreat had little meaning now. The warform's tendrils lashed outward, piercing buildings and drawing energy from them. Towers wilted like dying plants, collapsing into piles of ash and bone. From orbit, satellite feeds captured the destruction, relaying it back to the Union. When those images reached the core worlds, panic spread like wildfire. Citizens rioted in fear, markets crashed, and politicians demanded to know why no fleet had arrived yet. The forbidden distress beacon had done more than summon help. It had exposed the Union's vulnerability to its own people. Within the command chambers of Corps Command, the admirals faced a grim choice. "We can no longer ignore this," said Admiral Oriv, slamming a fist on the table. "Deploy the fleets. Even if they arrive too late to save Nemelis, we must confront the Siraki now or lose everything." Others hesitated, voices laced with dread. To strike at them is to invite reprisal. If they can unleash horrors like this on one colony, what will they do to our core worlds? The debate raged, but outside the walls of diplomacy, individuals acted. The Talcara war clans began mobilizing fleets of their own, eager to face a legendary enemy. The Avrians sent out telepathic cries, rallying distant allies. Even smugglers and mercenaries armed their ships, lured by both fear and opportunity. The beacon had stirred the galaxy in ways no one had foreseen. Back on Nemelis, the defenders fought desperately. Orus ordered a rearguard to buy time for the last transports. Soldiers set charges, collapsing buildings onto advancing Siraki, though the creatures clawed their way out of rubble like revenants. Every block became a grave. Neela refused to leave the command center, despite Horus demanding she board a transport. "If I leave, there will be no one to direct the evacuation," she argued. Her golden eyes burned with defiance. "My people need order more than I need safety." But even her resolve faltered when the war form turned its gaze toward the shelters. Its tendrils slammed into the ground, ripping open bunkers like tin cans. Screams echoed as civilians were dragged into its writhing mass. Horus gritted his teeth, his voice breaking as he gave the order, "All remaining forces, focus fire on that thing. Buy them time." Every blaster, every missile, every desperate weapon lit the sky, hammering against the warform. But it only slowed, never stopped, feeding on destruction itself. And above the chaos, the beacon still pulsed faintly, its call unanswered, its promise uncertain. The defenders of Nemelis fought with grim determination, but the tide was against them. Fires consumed the capital, the warform devoured shelters, and Siraki swarms prowled the streets like predators in a feast. For every life saved, 100 more were lost. Dr. Neela Varus stood in the command center, staring at the fading beacon. Its glow weakened with each passing moment, as though mocking her hope. Had the Union abandoned them? Was this how her world would end? Burning beneath alien claws while the galaxy watched? Then, without warning, the beacon pulsed violently. A deep vibration rattled the chamber, strong enough to knock her to her knees. The technicians gasped, their screens filling with static. From the noise, a new signal emerged, a frequency older than the Union itself. In orbit, the Siraki paused mid-slaughter as their sensors screamed. A rupture tore across the void, light bending as though space itself resisted what was coming. And then, something emerged. It was not a Union fleet. It was not Talkara warships, nor Avrian constructs. What arrived was colossal, dwarfing even the Siraki cruisers. Its hull was blackened, scarred, and bristling with ancient weaponry. It bore no insignia, no banner of peace or war, only silence. The vessel was unmistakable to the oldest civilizations, a relic of the extinguishers, an ancient human war fleet thought long lost to time. The galaxy had whispered of them for centuries, humans who, in the distant past, had waged wars of annihilation so terrible they erased empires. When the Union was young, humanity had vanished, retreating into shadows, their fleets forgotten. Until now, the warship hung above Nemelis, casting a shadow across the planet. Then its weapons fired. Not beams, not missiles, but a storm of pure devastation. Entire Siraki cruisers vaporized in an instant, their shrieks cut short as their matter was torn apart at the molecular level. The warform roared, thrashing as the ancient guns carved through its bulk, ripping its tendrils to ash. On the surface, both defenders and invaders froze. Soldiers lifted their eyes to see the heavens burning with light unlike anything they had ever known. Even Commander Horus, hardened by years of war, whispered in awe, "Gods preserve us." The Siraki fled in panic. For the first time in memory, the predators were prey. Their ships scattered, some obliterated mid-flight, others retreating into faster-than-light escape. The warform collapsed, its mass dissolving into black ichor that poisoned the soil. And then the warship's comms opened. A single voice, cold and human, echoed across every channel. The beacon was heard. The debt of blood is not forgotten. The humans have returned. In the command center, Neela felt her heart skip. The galaxy had begged for salvation, and salvation had come, but not as they imagined. Humanity had awakened, and what horrified the galaxy most was not the Siraki. It was that the ancient human war machine still lived, and it was willing to fight again.